everyone, and thank you for joining me on another episode of Evolve Podcasting Episodes. Stay right with me. I have a great episode for you this afternoon, so stay right with me. Don't go nowhere. I will be right back. Thank you guys so much for joining me on this Sunday afternoon podcast. You already know, though, this is the podcast that builds one another up, shares your opinions, your thoughts, ideas, beliefs, and your feelings, where you're never outcast for being who you are. Thank you for joining me. Like I said, this is a perfect Sunday. Well, in my neck of the woods, we got great weather. It's nice and sunny. And earlier today, I listened in on the TBN Women broadcast, as well as I attended services online this morning. So now I'm ready to bring forth another episode. And I had to really think about this one because I may step on some toes with this one. But then again, that only means I've stepped somewhere where the topic is, it needs to impact most. So I wanted to do this episode, and it's a good one. I wanted to do this topic after experiencing this myself and reading something on the story from Kay Roberts. I said that this needs to be my next podcast episode, and because many people may not even know about this or not realize how they could be participating, in this culture. And the culture that I'm speaking about is the culture of victimizing or victim blaming, In this episode, this is what I'm going to focus on: victim blaming as well as victimizing. So let me begin. What is victim blaming? Victim blaming is when a victim has experienced a trauma and then is blamed for what has happened to them, such as if a victim was sexually assaulted or been in an abusive relationship. These are just a few of the types of victims who have experienced victim blaming. Then you have victims who have been the target. You can also be use victim blaming if you're a target of identity theft. Criminals who commit these types of crime most of the time blame the innocent person they criminalized. If you use your credit card or have been scammed by a phone call and you provided this information, and when they're caught, the other person on the phone who is the criminal, they don't see no wrong in what they're doing. But most of the time when they're caught, they blame the person they've criminalized against. But the other person is the innocent person. But when, it's only a tactic used to manipulate the victim into ways of thinking it was their fault. So that person who may have taken that information or scammed a person and got their personal information, this is what they will use. They will use this tactic and try to make it when they're caught. They'll use this. This is used when they're caught. When they're caught by the police, this is what they will then blame the victim. But they'll try to make it think it was your fault. It was the person that they committed the crime against. They try to make it think it was their fault, or the person who experienced the sexual abuse or the domestic abuse. The abuser will try to make that person believe that what happened to them or why they was victimized, that it was their fault. They had to do something or say something that made it their fault. But They'll try to say something like, oh, you did this or that, and this is why this happened to you. But no, you didn't commit the crime, and it's not your fault for the behavior of the person who did assault you or commit a crime against you. I used to hear, from my own mother how, I used to hear from my own mother when she would give advice to me, and I would just kind of like look at her and be like, that don't sound right. But my own mother, she was a victim of domestic abuse. And, she never saw that what she was experiencing or what her abuser was doing to her was not her fault, but it was the abuser's fault. But she could never see that the domestic abuse she experienced was not her fault. She could never see that it wasn't her fault for what was happening, but the abuser had manipulated her so badly that she believed him. And she took that into her everyday adulthood life, that when people of her own household were abused or were the victim of a crime at no fault of their own, she would say things that made the other person think it was their fault. Like, well, if you would have done this or done that differently, so it became something she never outgrew or realized. It's people who, are really, truly victimized. So if a person was, if a person came to her, say, for instance, myself, if I came to her and I needed assistance from her, guidance from her, she would assist correctly, incorrectly. She wouldn't assist right. She wouldn't assist correctly because of the mind frame that she herself never healed from. His victim blaming her. She was a victim, and it was not her fault, but she couldn't see that. So whenever she gave advice, her advice was wrong. It was off. So in that way, I felt at times, when going to her, I felt like victim blaming was happening, but I didn't blame her only because she herself never healed. She continued to, blame herself and thought it was her fault and it went with her up into her adult life that, the advice that she was given off, it came off totally wrong, but she was given the advice, based off of what she had experienced. She was given advice on that, but Band-Aids are only temporary fixes. It doesn't bring relief to the pain or keep scars from developing later. And I use this example of the Band-Aid because you can cover up a Band-Aid, but when you take it off later on, you still have pain from that situation, and you still, will develop scars, later on. So that was what my own mother herself, went through, and what her outcome was. She still had pain and she still had scars, and she gave advice to her children, or to myself. She would give advice that wasn't right. So, but she was coming from a place of that pain and a place from those scars that she experienced. So, but I never blamed her. I love you, Mom. I never blamed her. But this what can happen, when they use this what can happen to a victim when victim blaming is being successful. This is what you go through. You continue to think that, it is your fault, or it is I am the reason why I went through this. I did this wrong, or I did that wrong. This is what can happen later on. So, but let me tell you something. Don't allow yourself to fall into this mentality. It does more harm than good. You will never recover if you allow your abuser to plant a seed in your head that what they're doing to you is your fault. Or it was your fault because you stayed or you didn't leave. No, don't, let me tell you something. Abusive people have their mind set on abusing and manipulation, if they are not abusing you, 9 out of 10, they're abusing someone else in place of you. So victim blaming is what they do and what they will use to make you think it was your fault. They will never take accountability for their behavior. If it was when you were a child that you were abused, and if you allow that seed to grow that they've planted, it will grow from that moment onward, even into adulthood. You'll be a victim, but living your life thinking it was your fault. Then you'll put that onto your children or onto whoever you have a relationship with. If something happens to them and they reach out to you, you'll advise them wrong and tell them it was their fault. You'll find that something they said or did, that was the reason why they're, to blame for what happened. This advice is wrong. You don't tell people who are and have been victimized to stay in an abusive situation, or advise them, make them feel that what they did, caused the abuse. No, there's no reason for anyone to be abusive to anyone. There's nothing you could say or do to be placed in that situation, to be placed where you're abusing someone. So if you can help them get, if you can help someone, get them help, because what you allow or what you see and what you allow, and when you don't step in, when you can help someone, you can offer that person help, but you don't. Just remember, what you allow will actually happen to you in return. It will come back. It might not come back in that same way or in that same situation, but it will come back where you will need help from someone, and you will want a person to reach out and help you. It doesn't have to be an abusive situation or a criminal situation. It could be just you need help, and then it could come back on you where a person may be there to assist you and help you, but don't. So that's something that you want to think about. So if you're able to help, if a person asks for help or needs it, point the finger later. Later on, point the finger. But you want to get them safely into safety, and not with someone who is not capable of keeping them safe for for the long run. Temporary help isn't safety. You hear me? Let me say that again. Temporary help isn't safety. Safety is long-term help and permanent. That is safety. Okay? How can you give a person temporary help, but then see them put back into the same place to be victimized once again? That's not safety. Safety means you're in a place to be you, make your own decisions without harm, and walk away from that situation and not worry about looking over your shoulders or being hurt or harmed. Let me say that again. Safety means you're in a place to be you, make your own decisions without harm, walk away from, that situation, and not worry about looking over your shoulders to be hurt or harmed. Safety isn't safe today, but you got to go get up. You have to get up and you have to face it again tomorrow. That's not safety. Safety is a permanent fix. That's what safety is. Safety is permanent. Once you are brought into safety, you can, the next day and even months away down the road, that's safety. When you don't have to worry about looking over your shoulder or having to get up and leave and go back into this. That's not safety. That's not safety. You want to be put into safety, not temporarily safe, but you want to be put into safety, which is permanent. Safety is permanent. If someone's going to help you, tell them you want them to help you to be safe permanently.